Welcome to the Localization Fireside Chat. I'm Robin Ayub, your host. Join me for captivating conversations with industry leaders exploring localization, translation, and global communication. Ignite your curiosity as we expand your horizons through these conversations. So let's dive in together into the Localization Fireside Chat.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Localization Fireside Chat. My name is Robin Ayub. I'm the founder of this 100% independent podcast and YouTube channel that is dedicated to the localization industry. And this afternoon, I have the honor to have with me my good friend and colleague. We've worked together for many years, Tugdual Delisle. And Tugdual, he is the managing director for Lionbridge Games. And Tugdual, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the conversation. Always good to see you. And looking forward to having a conversation about localization for games. Games localization is really happening worldwide, and having some insights from your perspective, Tugdual, would be great, because there's some, information, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, about what is involved, why localization for games, etc. What's the driver behind it, how it's done, etc. We'll dig into those eventually in this conversation. First, thank you for joining us. Like we say on this channel, everybody's got a story. And, this is my 52 podcast recording and counting. And every one of those stories is a very interesting story. This industry has many interesting stories to be told. And that's your opportunity. Welcome to the channel, TD. If you don't mind, give us your story.
Sure. And Robin, thanks for having us. When we talked in Boston, it was like 2 weeks ago. I discovered you were doing a podcast. Oh, I want to talk. I want to be with you. I mean, we always enjoyed our encounters and always have fun together, right? So thank you for inviting me, right? And so just I've watched a few of your podcasts, so I know you always ask what the story, right? I was watching John's recently. So I knew quite early that I wanted to be in the language business, right? From high school in the French, when you like your last 3 years of your high school education, you used to specialize liberal arts versus science. I chose the liberal arts, and with an emphasis on languages. So I studied English, German, and Russian those days. So I knew I wanted to be in the language business. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, to be fair. So I went into university in the west coast of France. And for the first 2 years was a lot about civilization, linguistics, general accounting, legal, kind of overall language and business training. It's only when I got into the third and fourth year that I knew I wanted to become a translator and a terminologist. We had and you'll see the connection with you, Urban, in Canada, right? We had a bunch of teachers, right, who were actually formerly professional translators, had been in Canada. One of them had been actually working for a long time in a translation bureau in Canada. And they brought all those very interesting practices, right, to the learning world, to the university world, right? Okay. And we moved from translating very generic article to working on real life translation projects. And we just loved it, right? And, they were Canada still is, but was in those days very advanced in terms of translation processes and technology. We really worked on, we actually worked on a database, terminology database that was contributing to Termium in those days. So we had that type of connection. Sure. Yeah, you're speaking 86, right? That was very early in France. So they completely different approach to being a translator, and we just loved it. And I was thinking, it was funny. It says in our fourth year of project, right, our thesis in a way was we translated an ERP software for a Chicago company, and we were 20 students. We did 600 pages in 6 months. So I was thinking, really high productivity. Right. But it was really exciting. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then, enter the working world. Right. Okay. And, did the traditional translator, editor, program manager, but rapidly moved into operations management. And, when I joined Lionbridge around 2022, starting to move in strategic account management, strategic business development. Right. And, speaking about games around 2014, I saw a market opportunity and worked with Lionbridge management to really formalize that opportunity in Lionbridge game services in those days, and just accelerated that opportunity when John came as a CEO and asked me to focus on games, which was really a good, fabulous decision by Lionbridge. And it's been really a fun moment. Okay. So, and just having fun every day, literally, right? Okay.
So for the audience, some fun facts, and I don't mind, I hope you don't mind, I spill a little bit of it being not too much of a spilling, but Tugdual is from France and he currently resides in the United States. So he had to make the change, he had to make the shift. Like, we live in a global environment now, and we've
Yeah.
always been as language lovers, as passionate for languages. We always lived in that mindset that there's no borders. It doesn't matter where you are, you're doing what you love to do, and you continue to do what you love to do.
Correct.
So how was that transition for you from, just on a personal level, from moving from one country to another? How did that work for you?
So, yeah, great question, actually. So I moved a lot quite around. I worked actually during my university curriculum, right? I stopped at the second year, lived in England for a year and a half, came back after the third year, went to Germany, right? Okay, and lived there for a year. And even when I was a language student in high school, I used to hitchhike around the UK, England stuff. So I always loved to travel. Had lived, even like 2 or 3 years into my job, I moved to the United States on the East Coast to actually manage a small company that was doing work for the World Bank, right? Among other things. Fascinating job, right? So I always loved to move around. I met my wife at Forest Hill College. Same love of travel. She had a passion for Canada. She had just worked as a translator terminologist in Canada for 6 months. I have a lot of Canadian friends. So that got us together. And so after 5-6 years in Paris, I was offered that opportunity to move to Seattle, to spend a lot of time around the Microsoft relationship that was growing. And without hesitation, I remember the call said, "Hey, Anne, should I press send?" And she says, "Yes, go." Right. Okay. It was a family decision to move, and it's been a great decision. Right. I've enjoyed my time in Seattle immensely, and so has the family, I believe. Right. Okay. So.
Excellent. Great. Now, for those who are not familiar, and our audience, some of them are not familiar with the game market, the games market. Can you talk a little bit about, so initially when you thought, okay, so this is a great idea, I got to do it, and there was some issues, there was some stuff that happened that pushed you to that, and the company making a decision to move in that direction, you saw an opportunity, etc. So what is the games market, and why do you think at the time and now you still believe that it is a good market to be in?
Totally. So, the games market is the largest form of entertainment on the planet in terms of revenue. It's around 180 billion, right? So it surpasses movies, music, books combined now, right? So, and numbers are floating around that there would be about 3 billion gamers, enjoying that form every day in various platforms, console, PC, mobile. So it's a very, very significant industry. It is touching growing demographics, right? Okay. And of course, growing, in all the markets and locales in the world, right? It's a truly global phenomenon. And interestingly, on a bit of the soft story, but maybe one of the area, because, I'm surrounded by gamers, right? I've got one at home next door, right? Okay. And one of the form area where people can still connect, right, with people who are different from them, right? Phil Spencer, CEO of Xbox, said, "Hey, it's the only area, maybe one of the only area where I can play with somebody. They can be of any walks of life. I don't know. We don't care. We're just having fun around the game." So I think there's a very interesting element to that beyond the sheer numbers, which are, very significant. Just give you a sense, when we went to the language board in 2014 to create language games, we were very excited that the market was at 60 billion, right? Okay. It's tripled. And, analysts have it at 300 billion by 2030. Who knows, right? Okay. It's going through it's clearly a shakeup those days and a slowdown, but clearly a very significant market opportunity for us. And that's why I decided to go into it. We had a number of programs and projects in those days, and customers were asking us whether we were actually project scale or industry scale, right? And we had to really make a decision, and, fortunately and intelligently, Lionbridge decided to be industry scale and really invest in it. And that's how that formalized. Now, going back to the story a little bit, right? Okay. I created the first games translation department in 93 in France as part of my, predecessor employer. Yeah. And it was, games were different, right? It was, what you could call edutainment in the beginning, right? Products like Creative Writer, or Magic School Bus by Microsoft. Okay, but still, that's where we started. So I got a early insight into what the game, and it was already a very fun product compared to, and I grew up and I still, in technical translation, right? Okay. I used to work with teachers who were working for Siemens, right? Okay. And then working for Microsoft. So very technical, very different disciplines, right? Clearly going to games gives you an interesting balance in what you do, right? So, but then, around 2014, from 2010 to 14, we're starting to grow a number of relationships, and it was time to decide. Customers wanted us to decide, and we decided. And the rest, as I say, is a bit of a history, as we built one of the world leaders in the supply and into the game services area, right? So,
if you don't mind me asking an elaborate question, so you've seen I want to call it translation, just to make sure that some people are confusing localization and translation. We're talking about the same thing here. So if we are talking, you've seen translation being done in industries other than the games industries, and you've seen it from within the gaming industry. In your opinion, what are the fundamental differences between these two? And I'm assuming there are differences.
Yeah. For the most part, it's a creative endeavor, right? Okay. I'm a translator. I've done a lot of translation, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with teams technical translation, or what we call software localization, is a lot about accuracy, precision, mm-hmm. right? Repetition and precision, right? Okay. And so you got to know the product, you got to know the technology you're working on, right? So that's one format. And the game side, you still have that. You need to know the IP, what we call the genre. You need to know the game. You need to be a passionate gamer, but you're really conveying a story to your culture, right? You have to completely understand the culture of the product, the story of the product, and you have to say, all right, how do I make sure that my fellow gamers in France, Germany, name the market, right, had a similar emotion and experience similar emotion when they play the game? That's really fundamental, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going from precision in a way, and which is hard, by the way, right? Okay, because it's not easy, right? It's not about a difficulty. It's a matter of to a storytelling, right? So different people, different translators, right? Language has a very varied community supporting our various verticals. The gamers, game enthusiasts who localize, are not the same that would support us on a product or technical localization or life science product. Very different enthusiasts. So
it sounds like it's all about who consuming the content, right? So if an engineer was reading a tech manual, need to understand it in a certain way, but if a young teenager playing a game, they need to feel that emotional attachment, that emotional impact to what they're doing, I'm assuming, right?
Completely. It's exactly that, Robin. It's about the emotion, right? Okay. And that's why we always say, we tell our teams, right? Okay. Think about the gamers first, right? And the end customer is not a publisher, developer, right? It is a gamer in the market who's going to consume that product, who's going to spend, $50, $60, or has a subscription to a streaming service for games. So it can be a significant investment for that person. We need to respect that experience, right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And by the way, gamers are very vocal when that experience is not met, or their expectation is not met, right? There's notion of game community. Pretty rapidly when you haven't hit the bar, right?
That's right. That's right. They make it known.
They make it known, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. I love this feedback loop, right? Okay, that's how we improve and make it right for them, right?
So you've been running Linebridge Games for a while now, and you know the market, the competitors, what's going on around you. Would you mind telling the audience what makes Linebridge Games different? What makes Linebridge Games such a success story? I've known you for years. I've watched you grow this division for leaps and bounds. I've talked to you on several occasions, and every time I talk to you, you're full of excitement. You're still excited. You're still passionate about this. You haven't hit that plateau yet where everybody says, "Oh, I'm bored. I got to do something different." You're still so excited about it. There must be a secret there. I'm trying to unlock that.
Yeah. So, by the way, it's our 10-year anniversary. I think people have inferred that from my, me mentioning.
There you go. We're talking on your 10-year anniversary. That's very good.
Exactly. So it's going to be, we're going to celebrate a lot this year, right? Okay. Look, I think our success is really, due to the quality of the people we've assembled. Okay. As I was talking to one of our leaders the other day, he says, I don't understand what's here, but all the people I'm working with are really, really good, right? I'd say, all right, fine, I will take it as a compliment. Okay. But again, I think it's really day in, day out, work on think about focus on the gamer, right? Okay, right? Forget the rest, forget revenue, forget margin for a second, right? Because we're running a business, but focus on the gamer, work on that experience, okay? And we'll be good, okay? And so that's one aspect. That's really on the output and the quality. And also the other aspect I think we've been very good at is forming that very unified customer experience for our customers, right? Okay. I want them to feel that when they engage with our sales team, solutions team, our delivery team, they speak to the same company, same culture, right? That even if they buy different services, we have actually significant number of customers who actually buy multiple services from us, like audio, QA, LQA, to experience. But across the board, they have to feel it's easy to work with us and it's easy like to work one company. I think those two elements I've created are part of elements of success. I think we've also invested significantly in the business, right, at the right time. Okay, we've accelerated when it was good to accelerate. We made a number of smart acquisitions with DNA on us. So all those factors together have been at the source of our success.
Yeah, so this is great. Like, I know you guys have made some acquisitions that supported the business and moving it forward, and I also noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when the pandemic hit a few years ago, 2020, 2021, I felt it. There has been a surge in digital consumption, digital, whatever that is, games, videos, Netflix, whatever it is. Because people are, they needed a source either of entertainment or,
yes,
passing the time or whatever it is. Has this impacted you positively, negatively, or indifferent?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, you're completely right. I mean, I would say this 2019, late 22 moment has been seen significant growth in our business. Similar as Netflix, for example, or, people being at home consume much more, entertainment in every form, right? Okay. I think the space now is digesting that moment, right? People, are going back to the theaters, right? They're going back, to the restaurants. So the discretionary spend that gamers would have for games is reduced. And I think you can see that impacting the gaming world those days, right? There's a bit of a shakeup. Some people say there's too many games on the market. Studios are closing, right? Of course, that is this surge in gaming time was supported by very low capital and low interest money, right? So people invested a lot in new studios, new games, right? And I think there's a bit of a moment that's going to last probably through 2024, where the publishers and developers are reassessing what games do they want out there, right? Really the ones that will be successful, refocusing maybe on quality, right? So there's a bit of a moment of, all right, let's pause for a second and reassess where we are post-COVID and where do we want to go for the next couple of years. So we've seen a bit of a slowdown in our space.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, because I've seen some shifting in various. I just heard actually somebody sent me news this morning. iRobot, laying off a whole bunch of people, and they, Amazon called off their acquisition on that.
Yeah.
So it's, we're seeing it everywhere. Have you seen it in the gaming industry, and to what extent? And how did you navigate all this?
Yeah. So yes, we have a channel, right, which is not a happy channel where we track customer events, right? Okay. And unfortunately for the last few months, it's been quite heavy on layoffs, right? Okay. Across the board, small, big, basically studios, project developers are rationalizing their workforce. Okay. Mm-hmm. And under the trend that we discussed earlier, right? This revenue are slowing down, right? And the amount of money to develop new games is also slow. I would say more critical in where it goes. Okay, so there's an adjustment in the games workforce. Okay, clearly.
And do you think this adjustment is a normal adjustment? Because the number of gamers is not going down. Like, people are not stopping the gaming process. They're young kids are adopting gaming, and there'll always be gaming.
Totally.
And you mentioned earlier that the number of gamers are increasing, and there's a projected number of people that are going to be playing more games. But sometimes, like every other industry, people move in certain direction to certain business opportunity very fast. And there has to be some sort of a, adjustment. I wouldn't call it slowdown, just to rationalize where we are. Do we need all this, or do we need to adjust it a little bit? But the demand's still there. That's what I think.
Yeah, the demand is not growing as fast as it used to. If you look at the demands, right? I mean, 180 million, maybe actually the market retracted in 2002, for example, by 4%. So there's a bit of I think game companies, like the tech companies, may have actually overhired. I'm not in them. I don't want to judge that. Okay. It's just an assumption. It would be, I'm sure we're making those decisions quite painfully, right? Okay. Nobody lays off. So, but I mean, there was a talent war similar in the game space that there was in the tech space. Okay. So maybe some companies, decided to really bulk up their talent pool, thinking there would be a little bit of the curve of growth would not, slow down as much, or we continue to grow. And then there's this moment of, okay, the economics may not be completely working out as we had figured in 2019 or 20.
So beside the headcount, what do you think of the number of titles that these studios are publishing now? Is it equal? Is it on the increase, or is it reduced?
I think there's a reduction, at least for now, I would say, and I don't have an exact count. We're hearing of studios closing or studios hunkering down, and or IPs being stopped or canceled, right? Okay, and all of this because probably of ROI, and then they're not going to be viable, right? So maybe the industry is making some hard calls, right?
Yeah.
Really. Now, interestingly as well, there's the industry continues to invest, games continue to be developed and published. It's just the super hype and excitement of the 19 to 22 cycle is kind of, coming down. We're going back to a more normal pace, I would say.
Yeah. I would imagine it's something like, when you're in the movie business and, you make, 1 year you make 2-3 good movies, you hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
And some years you don't make good movies, but you still make movies, but they don't make money. And you still, you got to have to adjust somehow, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, to some degree, it's quite similar. But you need to keep making movies if you want to watch movies.
In games, that's the product, right? In game, that's the product, right?
You gotta develop games, right? That's why activity. I mean, I differentiate between the games world activity and our own activity on this game. We're not slowing down, okay? But overall, the overall games world is reassessing a number of their, growth pillars, I would say, right? Okay.
Tugdual, who's your ideal customer? Like, if somebody's listening to us right now and says, "Okay, man, I want to talk to these two," who's your ideal customer?
Oh, that's a hard question. We love them all, Robin, right? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
The ideal customer. I mean, by the way, I have to say, the reason you asked me why I was not bored, right? Okay. I mean, the games world has been. I just love it. The product is amazing, right? Okay. I remember my epiphany, right, was like in '96 when I was part of this, created this lingual tech multimedia, was focused on games localization in those days in France, and we started to work on Dark Eye, right? You can research. I was amazing, right? We had the English as Williams Burr voice, and we had a great actor that said, "Oh my God." Right, this is so amazing, right? Okay, and I fell in love with the product at that time, right? So the product is amazing, right? And I have to say, one of the advantage is you're working with very creative customers, right? Okay, and the conversation is all about the quality of the game, the passion. Of course, you have economics, right? There's always a price per hour that exists as well, but it's rarely front and central, and always easier to agree on, because you have a common culture of the game passion, right? And the passion for the game and the output, right? That's why I love being in that space, right? Okay, you have really this balance of, let's talk about the product and the outcome, and then let's talk about the economics. In some areas of business, the economics have trumped the output, right? Okay, so
No, I know from a previous conversation that you provide variety of services in the
So,
industry, right? In that space, right? So, what are the major category of services you provide beside taking a game from one language, put it into another language? I'm assuming you do other things with
that's
in the
correct. I
game.
mean, we have three pillars what we call first the content services, which is basically localization and audio, either it's creating the original voiceover or globalizing the voiceover. The other second pillar is quality assurance or test, which is basically functional QA, working on the product at source, right? Or working on the product while it is localized, make sure the international versions work as well as the functional, and then player experience, which has two really pillars, what we call player insights, where we help our customers, get insight about how the game is going to behave on the market, right, or going to do in the market, and player engagement, which is supporting our customers in keeping a continuous link with the gamers, right, through community management or player support. These are the three pillars, Robin, right, and many more and more customers actually come to us for actually doing more and more with them, like what I call the stack, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
right. So because there's a lot of complementarity between both services, right?
So, TD, for those who are not familiar with the game industry, is it similar to any other industry? You've got your 800-pound gorillas at the top of the industry, and you got a whole bunch of studios that they're small SMBs, small to medium businesses in the middle, and to the tail of the industry, I would call it. Is that like how it's composed, or
Of course.
is it is it like more distributed, evenly distributed?
No. You've got your high-end Koreas, Sony, Microsoft. Okay, now bigger with the Activision Blizzard
Sure.
acquisition, right? Tencent, number one, gaming company. But you could look at it and think of it like the movie industry in a way, right? You've got the names, the parameters, but below that you have a number of studios. Even within those giants, they really operate at a studio level, right? And studios have quite a lot of autonomy on the creativity, for example, right? All of this, under supervision, of course, right? So they're not a monolith, right? Okay, I mean, within a Tencent, you're going to have a Riot, you're going to have a Marvelous, right? Within Microsoft, you're going to have, Studio Obsidian or another, or you're going to have now Activision or Blizzard. So these are not each one of their own culture, right? Okay, and that's what's fun, right? Okay,
Yeah.
you don't work really for, a company X, right? You work for different studios. They have their own cultures, their own genre, their own IPs, right? That's what's exciting. Every time we engage with a new studio, right, we engage with a different customer, even within a big one. And then you have the whole, what we call the AA studios, right, which are basically people like really, usually led by a very creative leader, right, who's got some significant funding or even insignificant, but it's got a funding to build his vision. And these are also very fun to engage, sometimes with similar budget as a studio within a big organization, for example, right? Okay, and then the layer is what we call the indies, people who have, have one game, they put all in on the game, they're going to publish it, and they bet the farm on the house, and sometimes become very successful, right? So very, very interesting ecosystem, so that we are facing with, but it's not very homogeneous. I hope I'm choosing the right word, right? Okay, that's very enjoyable, right? Okay.
Now, I hear I live in Canada, as you know, and I hear Montreal like is a hub for, games and game studios, etc. There's several companies,
Totally.
and lots of they employ a lot of people in the Montreal region. In your opinion, what are the major hubs? I'm sure Montreal is not the only town in the world where you have those major hubs of certain expertise in the game development. What are the major hubs around the world? Do you know?
Of course. I mean, by the way, Montreal is in the Americas, maybe in the world, one of the largest, I would say, creative and services center in the game industry. I mean, Montreal is very important, right? Okay. I know Ontario is trying to offer, similar incentives, right? And I think Saskatchewan, last time I checked, was trying as well.
Wow. You pronounced it correctly, and I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, and there's also, of course, in British Columbia, there's a lot of creative energy as well. But look, think about it like the West Coast, right? I mean, LA, the LA Irvine corridors, some in the Bay Area, of course, Seattle, right? The Seattle area, a very big gaming center, right? In Europe, it's kind of distributed. Really, the UK has a lot of creative. Poland is now one of the biggest games market in the world in terms of creative energy, right?
Mhm.
Okay, Germany as well, and then the Asian market, of course, China. So it's very quite distributed, right? The China,
Yeah,
Japan,
yeah.
Korean, is like it's a nation of gamers. Sometimes we like to say, right? Okay, it's quite a global. I had actually an interesting statistic for you, and I'm going to try to remember. But if I don't remind, I think 80% of the top grossing movies in the world were connected to Hollywood. Okay,
Yes.
I think the ratio for games, I think it was barely over 50% of the games had a Americas or US connection.
Oh, wow.
Yes, in terms of where the games, when the IP was created. So it's a much more balanced creative energies, right? Okay.
Oh, wow.
And that's really what's enjoyable as well. It's a global business.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. You need that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we have, footprint where it matters, right? But, Korean customers, Japanese customers, Chinese customers, right? Okay. And of course, US, European customers, Canadian customers, but very, very, very distributed in terms of where creativity is coming from, which is great. Which is, by the way, going back to our mission of cultural adaptation and convey the story, right? Okay. When you take an IP from Asia to the West, what we call East to West offering for us, right? Gotta rebuild the story, right? Gotta use narrative designers. You gotta translators who have done that and so. So that's passion. I didn't know that, right? In the tech world, you had the fields by die, all that stuff, right? You know that, Robin, very well. Or in Japan, you cannot have this or that on the software, for example, the date format, right? The classic. But in the games, it's at the story level, right?
Yeah.
It's about, how to convey that, it's this cross-cultural element and is just great. Okay.
Now, is the users though? So I know the IP, from an IP perspective, game IP perspective is balanced, but are the users the same as well as the gamers are balanced as well, or do you see certain gamers demographics have bigger, more demanding, more higher appetite for games than other demographics? To lower it down to an example,
in terms of
English versus Spanish versus
in terms of
Indian.
gamers, completely. In terms of gamers, Asia is number one, right? Okay.
Okay.
Then you got then in the North America, then Europe, then Latin America, right? But all of them, until maybe a year ago, things, I don't have the exact latest stat, but Latin America was growing at 7 to 10% a year in terms of gamers and spend, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Europe was 2-3% growth. All those markets were growing, right? Okay. Southeast Asia is coming online as well. We're starting to do more and more work into those markets, right? Okay. And India as well. So it's really a truly global phenomenon, right? Okay.
Yeah. So have you ever seen I would imagine now anyone who creates a game, the most immediate thing that you need to do is they need to think how many languages I need to put this game into. Correct. Versus the old days, I used to create game, for instance, in English, and it will always stay in English, or in French, will always stay in French. So now I'm assuming the game studios, it's like you don't even have to convince them that they need to, to localize their game into multiple languages. It's part of their business procedure.
Yep.
Is it far-fetched that way, or are you still?
No. Actually, it's interesting. So, different. It's an interesting model, right? Okay, because it's a bit like, again, I'm going to refer to the Hollywood model, right? You got the studios who create, okay, and then you got publishers, right? So in the big organizations, like we mentioned earlier, they're going to do their own publishing, okay? But another model is I create a great game, I'm going to give it to a big publisher to publish to the world, and the publisher to the world will take care of sometimes of QA, but of localization of the text, the content, localization of the audio, stuff like that. So there's a bit of a separation of missions in a way, right? Okay, developers will develop. They will be published sometimes by their own organization or not, or they will work with a publisher who's going to basically take it to the world, right?
Oh, I see.
This is interesting, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And some studios decide to do the jump. I'm going to self-publish, right? Suddenly they have to learn to do localization. They have to market games. So you have all a bit so they don't always necessarily think about the world when they do the game. Sometimes always, right? Okay. Because they have a story they think going to work, and then sometimes they don't always think at source how this is going to convey in Korea or Japan or France, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you got still some of the variants and some and of the stories, like like we call it globalization. Is globalization embedded in the creative process? Not always. Not
Yeah,
always.
yeah.
Not always.
Not
Actually,
always.
not always. Right. I mean, we frequently have to work with our Asian partners to tell them, hey, this work doesn't work culturally. You cannot do this, and vice versa. Right. You cannot get
Yep.
a super shooter game in this culture. It won't work. You need to adapt. So there's a lot of cultural conversation on this, right? It's not
So you're almost doing consulting plus
totally
localization,
not to
basically.
mention geopolitical, right?
Yeah.
And you start to
Yeah.
touch the Southeast, we say the China Sea world, the greater China
Yeah.
world, right? And the relationship with neighbors. Sometimes we have to work with our partners, right? On either side of the Pacific to make them understand that work doesn't work, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Robin, you should join Games. It's fascinating.
No, speaking of this, I'm imagining some of our audience here, they think, okay, Tugdual and Robin, they're making a good sense. I would like to join that whole game industry thing in localization. And, our audience is localization industry. So do they need to have an experience or an expertise in games before they join, or could they be retrained, can be reskilled, retooled? Have you seen this before, or what was your experience?
Yes. So, I mean, a good game translator will generally be somebody who plays games, right? Okay, and was has translated that type of material already, right? Okay, I mean, it's a specialization you choose, right? Really, right? Because for passion for the product, right? So over the years, you become better. You receive feedback. I'm assuming that's how it works. It's a bit like the people, I know that world a little bit, right? Is people who work on, for Netflix who do like, streaming videos, streaming content, localization.
Yeah.
So very different world, right? I know the translation is different, but the same. So you choose it, right? Or if you're a younger translator, if you want to do a switch, nobody prevents you from doing that, but you're going to have to immerse yourself in the product. Okay. You're going to have to do your homework to see and you're going to have some creative talent because again, you're telling a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, they have their own lingo, they have their own language, games have their own language, and codes, and you have very different genres as well. You got the simulators in MMOs, the open worlds, right? So you can build a specialty, right? Okay, it's hard that we have somebody who can work across everything as well. Similar like life science, tech, right? Games the same diversity of genres.
That's right.
Okay, but if you're a young translator and you play video games, which most of them do probably those days anyway, right? Okay,
Right.
It's a great career. It's a very rewarding career, right?
Yeah.
And
You're saying what you're saying is with a bit of a training and a bit of a self-motivation in terms of absorbing the material, in terms of immersing in the industry, you should be okay.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, if you play games, you know how you mostly play games in your language. You already know those things are translated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's you got to jump on it, right? Okay.
Excellent. Now, and I saved this one to the end because I didn't want to hit you with it at the beginning. So, the elephant in the room, AI, and in a variety of its form, Gen AI, any type of AI. How is that impacting your industry? How is that impacting the games industry in terms of either the creation part or the creativity part, like on the game side of things? Because I know I'm hearing that AI is creating some games apparently, and that industry is going to go through that transformation on the AI side. And plus on the localization side, I'm assuming AI has some impact. How's that impacting you on both on the customer side and on our side here at Leverage?
So I prefer by saying I'm not an AI expert, right? Okay, remember
nobody is yet. We're still learning.
Yeah, I'm coming to the games world with more my translator and liberal arts background. So I'm also not an engineer, just to be very clear. So here's the most interesting conversation I had with somebody who was a creative director at a studio in the Seattle area, right? Okay, and because I wanted to understand what is the impact on games, right? Okay, and this different set of opinions. The one I told me is, look, it's going to multiply the creativity of the games industry, right? His opinion is, game industry may have been cruising a little bit in terms of the concepts, the business models, right? He says it's a welcome jolt. It's a welcome tool to give a jolt to our creative juices. He was very excited, actually, right? But what AI could bring to the game space, right? And that's what I'm hearing generally is the ability to create more complex game, more immersive games, right? Is going to be one of the positive outcome of AI, right? Now downstreams, I think we're all assessing still what it means if you're an artist, if you're a developer, if you're a translator, if you're a VO artist, right? No need to talk about the strike that happened in Hollywood. That is, the actors, whether your games or, you're a streaming VO artist, the same conversation over. I mean, right? So people are assessing what it means. Okay. I mean, the general statement across those disciplines, what I've heard from people who are in the art or people who are in the dev or in the translation is going to basically enhance the productivity of the better people, right? Okay. That's what I'm hearing generally, right? Like I'm not hearing doomsday scenarios.
No.
At all, right? But, people are still starting to use the tool, assessing the impact as far as we're concerned, because, that's what we're doing. Right, we're lucky you and I to be part of Language, one of the leaders, right? We know, right, we have a significant team in product management, R&D, and dev, who's basically building an infrastructure for us to succeed, which in games we are leveraging every day and augmenting with the game specific element. Okay, but I would say after a few months of pilot and experimentation, we're starting to have some data points, right? And we're talking to our customers, we experiment a lot with them. But I think it's going to be very interesting, right? Okay, what it does to us. I know how you help us.
Especially on the content creation part, especially on the game development part, right? So, for me, I agree with the concept of we're still discovering, because even the AI itself as a machine learning, still learning. The machine itself is still learning. So we're far from singularity, but not that far. I'm hearing singularity, not that far upon us. 5 to 7 years. That's what I'm hearing. It's people speculating at this point, but I don't know where that's going to end up. But at this point, you're right on the comment that from your friend in the area, that we needed something to poke us, basically to get us out of our comfort zone. So we say, okay, look what the machine is doing. Basically, human, play your part. Either you outsmart it, or it will create something better, something more different, or it's going to replace you. And there would be two categories. We always talk about this one. Category of people that will adapt, that will learn, that will use it as a tool to make them better. And the people that they're probably going to say, well, I can't do this. And there'll be a different story for that.
The gaming industry, though, of course, it's a creative industry, but it's also a very deep engineering industry, right? I mean, they are
I'm assuming,
they're at the forefront of some of those trends. They're absorbing those trends very well. So they've seen a few technology revolution already, right? So I think it's the game is the games world is going to do well with Gen AI. Now there's also an element which is the legal aspect, the IP protection, very deep, right? It's part of the values of the games world. IP is everything, got to protect it, right? We're still figuring out how Gen AI and IP protection play hand in hand, right?
Yep.
Okay. So there's going to be that element it's going to play, but I think for the most part it's going to be a positive impact. Okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We can get more games faster, right? Okay. We're all going to benefit an
example, like if a studio would take them like 6 months to develop a game, using AI, probably will shorten that to like 2 months, 3 months.
Right on. I mean, what I'm hearing is the time to concept is going to be shortened significantly, which is basically the time to yes or no is going to be shortened quite rapidly, right? Okay.
And a lot of times, you've got these concept ideas, and you only want to dedicate to the prioritize them, one or two. They rise to the top after some studies and some surveys, and they say, okay, we're going to develop these 2 titles. I'm assuming now with the lower cost of development, you can develop more titles and take more risks out there, right?
Totally, and you're completely right, actually, because that's also one of the question in the Gen AI is, okay, there's going to be enhanced productivity, right? Who's going to benefit, right? What is the value redistribution, okay, and of those savings, right? My view is based on conversation with publishers and developers is this money is going to go back to being even more creative, okay, and closer to home, reaching out more gamers. right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because as we discussed, there's so many games the world can play. So your growth vector is reaching more gamers around the world. This is why we believe we're in an
Mhm.
ideal position to continue to grow is your growth is going to be attracting new demographics, new locales, new regions, right?
And the last topic I have before we close off, I'm cognizant of the time here for you. And I've seen it before, but I don't know to what depth or what extent. Have the gaming idea, the gamification, if you want to call it, has made it to the corporate world? Meaning that, are we using, I've seen it before, but I don't know to what level, to how much, to what depth it is being used in the corporate world, that in concept of gaming is being used as a tool to train for speed to learn. People like they learn faster if they game it, meaning like I've seen people like they use to train underwriters in insurance companies on, how to practice their work, how to do their job using some sort of a game. And are you seeing this in the corporate world, or has it not yet at a big scale? I mean, I know defense sector uses games to simulate and to do simulations, etc. But I'm
Yeah.
not sure in the corporate world.
So I've actually, to be honest, right, and we have a lot of it. Okay, but interestingly, 6 months ago, we started to work with a big American grocery chain, right, grocery store chain, right, but this is starting to use actually literally games, right, to engage their customers, right, on online, right. Okay, so I mean, remember early days, you had like it was a bit of a craze. Everything was gamified. You went to McDonald's, you had a gamified experiences. So I think it's maybe either we're not part of it, right, in all honesty, or it has slowed down. But this is interesting, and we're going to start see that more so in the integration of VR games, corporate, I believe, is going to be an interesting. Yeah. So in the simulation, so I think that's going to be where we see it. Okay, more. Okay.
So, TD, in our final thoughts here, any final comments, final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Just join the games world. I mean, play games. If you want a career, it's a very exciting career, right? Okay, whether you're a translator, you want to be a tester, right? You don't know what you do. You have a degree, but you don't know what to do. Come join, be a tester. Great way to get into the game space, right? We have many of our testers who've made a career and become producers, right? Okay, audio, plenty of career. I mean, even with even the audio potentially replacing some of the acting, there's going to be a lot of work to be done there. I mean, it's you could be a developer, an artist. It's a great,
Absolutely.
It's a great space to make a career. I mean, really.
Great.
And, you both on the developer publisher side, and I want to speak for industry, right? Irrespective of, we're competing for day in, day out, but our industry overall, our sourcing industry, right, offers really great careers as well, right? Okay. You can have fun and enjoy being in the game space, even if you're not on the supplier side, irrespective of where you are. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, play a lot of games. We need this revenue, we need the market to continue to grow, Robin, right?
That's right. That's right. So for the audience, I really want to emphasize the point that TD was trying to make here, that if you are in the gaming industry, or if you have any inclination to explore, to find out a little bit more about it, please reach out to my friend Tugdual. You can find him on the Linebridge website, linebridge.com, or on LinkedIn. He's also responsive on LinkedIn as well. Reach out to him. If you're a customer interested in exploring possibility of doing some business with Linebridge on the game side, please also reach out to Tugdual and his team. They'll be very happy to support you and help you out. Right. And for TD, I want to thank you so much for joining me today on this recording of this podcast. I really appreciate your time. You're so gracious with your time with me. Always good to see you. Always to have a good conversation together. I always enjoy our conversation. I feel like I've known you for years. It feels so natural for me to talk to you. A little bit, a little bit of time. Yeah, let's not age date ourselves.
So all about the spirit, woman, right? Okay.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So always pleasure.
Appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. Thank you. I want to thank the audience for listening into this conversation, for this podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. If you like the content that we're producing here, please like it, share it, comment on it, and we appreciate your support. And thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Localization Fireside Chat. Take the warmth of knowledge and renewed cultural passion with you. Keep exploring, stay curious, and until next time, this is Robin Ayub. Keep those global conversations alive.